when teachers speak really, really slowly like this. And for me, I just don't think that's very realistic. It doesn't prepare students for real conversation. Native speakers speak so quickly and we
Can you
squish our words.
share one or two British slangs or phrases
Experience.
that
A lot of people are nervous about trying to speak with native speakers because they
hmm,
think their English is just not good enough. It's not perfect enough. Or they're worried about being judged by the native speaker. Most like native English people only speak English, one language. So we're actually always very impressed when people can speak more than one. And we don't really judge people for trying to speak our language at all.
yeah. What's
Um,
like the most British thing about British people that people can recognize?
yeah. So this is a good one. I think if we
First of all, welcome to the session, Sam. Wait, do I call you Sam or do I call you Samuel?
Sam, yeah, it says
Okay.
Samuel on my Zoom,
Yeah.
but yeah, Sam.
Yeah. Okay. Welcome to the session, Sam. And as you're on my channel for the first time, would you mind introducing yourself for the audience, please?
Yeah, of course. So yeah, my name is Sam. I'm known as Sam Says English on TikTok and Instagram. So I make daily content on those platforms designed to help people improve their English speaking skills. So fluency, confidence, just sounding more natural and more native, focusing on the British native English. So I'm an English speaking coach. That's my main job. I sort of coach people one to one. I also have an English club, but then I make content daily just to be able to reach lots more people with yeah, helping them with their skills basically.
Okay, that's wonderful. And how did you get into this? How did you choose your field? How did you decide to become an English coach? And also, what made you decide that you want to go towards content creation in this field?
Yeah. So I studied marketing. That was my major. So I studied abroad actually. And so I had quite an international environment that I was studying in. And after that, yeah, I was living in Madrid after I graduated and I was working in marketing, but I started doing English conversation classes as a side hustle, like on the side. On one of the well-known platforms that people do this on. And then that just grew gradually. I started to lean more into preparing people for job interviews as well, like professional English. And so it just started to grow over the years. This was about 5 years ago. And then I started making content as well to basically reach more people and also to grow my business as well. And then I made the English Club after that.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's just been growing ever since, really.
Yeah, that's wonderful. So I guess you're the perfect person to ask this question. I get endless number of comments by people saying that um well, I when I'm speaking English, I don't know what to say. And I'm like, ask yourself a question. Is it actually really the English language or is it the communication skills? I think both are different. Being fluent in English and being able to hold a conversation. What's your take on that? What do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. I think people can sometimes get over focused on the language part of it, right? A lot of people forget about the listening part, right? It's a very common habit that even native speakers have as well, where we're waiting to speak. And so we're not actually listening to what the person is saying. So you just have two people speaking at each other. And so when you do actually learn and practice the comprehension part of it as well, then you're able to actually speak and say things that are reacting to what that person is saying. Another big part of this is what we call back channeling. So even these little noises or expressions like, okay, little things like that show the person that you're listening and you're actually engaged in what they're saying. But many learners get very focused in their head. Oh, I hope I'm saying the right thing. And then they're not actually very present in the conversation. So yeah, it's a really good point, right? Being able to speak English well does not just automatically mean that you're a good communicator. There are other parts to it.
Right. There are other parts to it. And I think one of them is the personality. I mean, how you present yourself in a conversation, right? What percentage do you think is it the fluency, and what percentage is your personality?
Mm. Um, I'd say we're talking about probably 60-40. I think
Yeah.
when you feel comfortable enough in your abilities and just the functional skills, then you can start to add more personality into that. You can start to play with the language that you're using. You can improvise as well and be a bit more creative. And that does take some time. You have to reach a point where you trust your skills and you trust your grammar. But yeah, this is a big thing that I help my students with, is being able to start to put themselves, their identity into their English. And so then they feel that they can use English the same way they would use their own native language.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, it's a really good point. Personality is essential to start.
Yeah. But I mean, a good follow-up question would be, okay, so when it comes to personality, there's also something called storytelling skills. And
Mm-hmm.
this is something not everybody has.
Mm.
How do you think can one work on their storytelling skills? Like, how do you tell a story to a person? Because I mean, I could be talking to some of my friends, and some of them tell a story so good, like you just want to keep listening, and the plot twist is at the end, and then some people just come straight to the point.
Mm.
How do you think can one achieve those skills?
This is a good one, because, as you say, even lots of native speakers don't know how to tell stories. It's quite a difficult skill.
Yeah.
There's a few different elements of storytelling that I can touch on. Firstly, structuring. Right, some
Mm,
people are naturally good at this, but knowing how to sort of start with an introduction to lead into it, then to build up to the main point of the story, right? To not, it's like telling a joke. The
yeah.
timing, the structuring is really important to have the impact that you want it to have. Um, as well as that, things like intonation, and the tone of your voice, right? When to rise your voice to build suspense and then come down. This is
Mm,
something I talk about in my content a lot, and I teach my students and my club members, is that a lot of the focus in English and British English is your tone of voice and the rhythm, and we really create meaning with
mm,
this, which is a huge part of storytelling as well. So yeah, these things are important parts to practice, right?
mm.
It seems like an obvious answer, but to get better at storytelling, you have to just practice telling different stories to friends, to strangers, and it is a skill that can be developed. But yeah, the patience is needed there as well. It's not easy.
Yeah. And I think when it comes to intonation, listening part becomes really, really important,
Mhm.
because we all talk differently in our native language. We stress upon different words.
Mm.
Sentence structure is different, right? So I also personally, how I learned English was by listening to native English speakers. Although I would say for me, it was quite difficult to understand the accent initially, especially the British accent. Even for like, if somebody, I'd be watching a movie and someone on the screen is saying thank you, I would have to look at the captions. What was this person saying?
Mhm. Mhm.
This is literally how I learned. And actually, in India, a lot of people prefer listening to non-native speakers when they are beginning their journey, which I don't personally think it's ideal. I mean, sure, maybe for you personally, it's easier to understand the accent. But then you, like you mentioned, the intonation part, I don't think you'd actually be able to learn that. And if your goal eventually is to maybe sound more native or natural,
Yeah.
I don't think that would be fulfilled, right?
Mhm. Yeah, yeah. I think, like you say, it depends on the goal as well. If you want to improve your ability to communicate with British
Yeah.
speakers, if you work in England, for example, and you want to be able to talk with them, then yes, you need to be focusing on listening to as much British English as you can, right? That's going to help you reach that goal more quickly. However, the one good thing about listening to different people speaking English with different accents, different ability levels, different speeds, tone of voice, the more variation that you get with that input, then you're building a very broad understanding and ability to understand English, to comprehend it. So I do tell this to people a lot. If you speak to the same person all the time, you'll get really good at understanding their English. But there's billions of people in the world. So if you want to be able to speak with anybody, then actually sometimes speaking with non-native speakers can be helpful for that reason. But it does just depend on the goal, definitely.
Let's talk about the confidence level now. A lot of people are good enough in English, good enough that they can hold conversations, basic conversations, but they don't know that. They are not aware of that fact, and so they never start communicating with people. For example, I have a friend, and she's from Brazil, and she is not really that confident in communicating in English. So she would just type the message, and she'd be like, "Yeah, I'm not really good at talking on the phone with you. I'm not really that good." But when I actually talk to her on the phone, she's pretty great. I think she's better than me, and her grammar was perfect, absolutely perfect. But she doesn't know that, and she doesn't believe that. And this is the story of like so many people, especially in India. What advice would you give to them? How would you make them understand that they do have sufficient skills to be able to hold a basic conversation with someone in English?
Mm, mm. This is a good one. I think confidence can be one of the number one things that holds people back.
Yeah.
I think, firstly, in my experience, a lot of people are nervous about trying to speak with native speakers because they think their English is just not good enough. It's not perfect enough, or they're worried about being judged by the native speaker. And I always try and remind people that firstly, most like native English people only speak English, one language. So we're actually always very impressed when people can speak more than one. And we don't really judge people for trying to speak our language at all.
Yeah.
Another important part of this, again, it comes back to the practice with strangers, right? It's one thing to be able to speak with someone that you're comfortable with, right? But if you really want to boost your confidence to be able to use the language with anyone, which is why we learn a language, really, then having conversations with people that you don't know, sort of taking that jump outside of your comfort zone is a really important part. And like you say, they might realize, oh, actually, I am much better than I thought I was. But you won't know that until you try and you sort of test your skills. So yeah, it's something that that it's almost a bit of an obvious answer. Is like you have to sort of take that leap, and then learn as you go. But one thing is for sure, you will never feel more confident if you don't actually use the language. And sometimes it can be nice to be reminded that there are people out there who maybe aren't as good as you, and it can give you a confidence boost, make you realize that actually you're not terrible. You just use it more.
But what do you think about the obsession that people have with sounding native, like the accent, especially? A lot of people try to copy it. What do you think? Because people, especially in India, are really they just feel so much about like how we sound to other people, the Indian accent. Do you think, because some people actually emailed me, they said that if you know someone that could teach me British accent, do let me know. And I thought, is it really necessary? I'm not sure, so I'm asking you, what do you
Mm.
think?
I get this question a lot. Like I get a lot of messages, people saying, I want to speak like a British person. I want to have a British accent. Maybe they've seen a TV show like Bridgerton or The Crown, and they want to speak like this. And I always have to remind people that being able to actually speak with a British accent and to sound like you are from Britain, this takes a long time. And some people spend a decade living in England and they still have a bit of their own native accent. So it is possible. And you'll see there are some amazing creators out there who make videos on British English, and they are not British, but they've just worked very hard to develop the accent. But in my opinion, it's actually better. It's better to focus on improving your pronunciation, making sure that the sounds are correct, that the words are understandable. This is much more important, I think, than trying to copy a British accent that maybe you've seen in a TV show or something like this.
Yeah.
People romanticize British English. They love the idea of the culture and they really want to be a part of it, which is amazing. But yeah, you have to be realistic that it's called immersion, right? Being in the culture, being around people for years, that's actually what builds a British accent. It's quite difficult to learn it like from another country or just having lessons. You can get close, but it's fine.
Yeah, so like the conclusion is that it's more important that you make sense to the person sitting in front of you, that your
Yeah.
pronunciation is clear rather than focusing on having that proper accent of the native speaker, right? And one thing, I think I was talking to a British English teacher, and he said that there is nothing actually called British accent because it really varies on the area that you live in. And the most common myth that people think, I mean, okay, so there's something called the RP, the received pronunciation, the old English, like the Queen's English, something it's called, I'm not really sure. That's what people think is the British accent. That's not true, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's a common misconception. So, like I
Yeah.
said, people see these TV shows, and they will, like, we call it the Queen's English or the King's English, maybe. We also call it BBC English, the type of English they use on the news on TV. And people think this is the norm, right? The majority of people in the UK do not speak like that. So it's also a bit of a class thing as well. Received pronunciation is usually used by people of a sort of upper class level, a social class. But there are so many different accents and different dialects across all of these different regions of the UK. And sometimes people forget because we seem very small, this tiny little island, but we have a lot of diversity when it comes to culture and then the language that we use. So there is somebody in the north, a city in the north of the country, who I might struggle to understand them because their slang, their accent would be completely different. So this is another thing I tell people when they ask me, can I learn the British accent? Well, which one? There's many different ones. And yes, RP is not what most people speak. So people are shocked when I tell them that. It's quite a surprise.
Yeah. And that's quite surprising that you also sometimes might struggle to understand the accent towards that is spoken towards the north. Wow, really? Is it just the accent, or do they also use different words in their
Yes,
daily vocabulary? Yeah.
absolutely. So it's not just the accent. There's a difference in like a dialect. So we have regional dialects, right? And then within those dialects, there are different forms of slang. There are quite common forms of slang as well that we use across the country. But then there's these really unique, specific sort of words and expressions and vocabulary that when you combine that with a very strong accent, like someone from Liverpool, for example, in the north, or someone from Scotland, these are difficult accents that people in the south, like myself, we might struggle sometimes to understand. We could still have a conversation, but yes, if we're both speaking in our own slang, yeah, there might definitely be some miscommunication. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so there is one thing that I think people might struggle with, especially if they're already struggling with the fluency in English. That is, if they move to the UK, and so there's this one thing called direct or indirect communication. I think UK might be known for indirect communication. They are very polite in their conversations. I know about Germany, they are very direct. So they're going to be brutally honest to your face, but at least you'd know exactly what they're thinking or what they expect you to do. Because I was talking to someone from the UK, and she said that you might be sitting in a group of people and you might raise an opinion, and a British person might say, that's interesting. That's interesting. And you might think, oh, interesting is equal to good. I raised a good opinion, right? But she said that that's like in most cases, that means that your opinion is going to be rejected and it's not really liked by people around you. So, yeah, what do you think? Are people going to struggle a lot when it comes to understanding what British people actually mean?
Yes, that I think it's a common struggle that people have, and especially if you come from a culture that's much more direct. You
Hmm.
gave the example of Germans. I studied in the Netherlands, and near Germany, I was around a lot of Germans, so I really experienced that difference. And at first, it was a bit shocking to me. I thought that they were a bit rude, because I was so used to this indirect communication.
Yeah.
This is also, I think, where tone of voice comes into
Hmm.
it. This is a really important part, because if I say to you, "Oh, wow, that's interesting," right? That's a genuine comment. I
Hmm.
genuinely think it's interesting. If I
Yeah.
say that's interesting, right, then that's clearly maybe not so clear, but that would be a British person saying, "Yeah, I don't think that's a great idea."
Hmm.
So the facial expression, the body language, the tone of voice, this is also a big part of it. It can reveal what we're really trying to say. But
Hmm.
yeah, people struggle with it a lot, and it's why I make videos on it to try and show people that it's not always so black and white. Like we might
Hmm.
say a certain thing, and actually there's layers below it. It's like a code. So yeah, this is a big difference of being able to speak English and then actually understand like the culture of native English and how we address confrontation or how we disagree with each other.
Hmm.
This is very indirect. Yeah.
Yeah. But I'm genuinely curious, why are British people so polite in their conversations? I was talking to a boy, I think he's around like 20 something, and he said, I'm so sorry that I'm in my t-shirt right now and not a shirt. And I was like, what are you talking about? I'm in my pajamas right now. I don't even care. And he was like, oh my God, I apologize. It's just a British thing. And that just made me really curious, why do you think that is?
I think there's a few things happening there. I think, firstly, when it comes to that example, I
Yeah.
think it's we don't want to give a bad impression. Or I say we, right, as Brits, we don't want to give a bad impression. We don't want
Hmm.
to feel like we are inconveniencing anybody or burdening them with our behavior, for example. So often we may make little we excuse ourselves and we apologize. I
Hmm.
mean, you know how much we use the word sorry, right? It's
Hmm.
crazy. So that's definitely a part of it. Then when it comes to confrontation and disagreement, we can feel, and I think culturally it's a thing where we feel quite awkward when we have to deal with direct confrontation. So we have these indirect ways of going around it so that it never has to be spoken like very obviously, but I can use a little code or a phrase that I know that person is going to understand what I've said.
Hmm.
You never have to explicitly have this confrontation.
Yeah.
So this is where hedging and indirect and structures, passive voice, all of this is a part of it. But I wish I could actually explain the origin of where this started.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's quite.
Okay, so if you had the powers to ban any one English advice from the internet, which is maybe really common, but you think it's highly misleading, which one would it be?
Mm. So for me, firstly, whether this is a piece of advice, I have seen people give this advice actually.
Hmm.
Um, there are quite a few creators out there that hyper focus on grammar. And some of them even make videos deliberately just correcting people who have made grammar mistakes in their videos. And the problem I have with this is that it means that learners sometimes think that that's the most important thing, that if my grammar is perfect, then I will be a perfect speaker.
Yeah.
But they forget that native speakers break these rules all the time, and we still communicate effectively with each other. So rather than focusing all the time on perfecting things like grammar and sentence structure, um, I also think people need to spend an equal amount of time looking at native expressions, looking at the rhythm and intonation and tone of voice, right?
Hmm.
These are how we actually create meaning. And that is then how you can develop your conversational skills.
Yeah.
Uh, One other thing to add there is when teachers speak really, really slowly like this. And for me, I just don't think that's very realistic. It doesn't prepare students for real conversation. Native speakers speak so quickly and we squish our words together. And if you don't prepare yourself for that and you only ever practice speaking at half speed, then you're going to have a shock when you are faced in a real conversation and it goes like that really quickly and you've
Hmm.
missed it. You don't know what happened. So yeah, over focus on grammar and actually not practicing at real speed. I think these are
Hmm.
some, yeah, very, you know, dangerous, misleading pieces of advice that can make it harder for people.
Yeah. Um, can you share one or two British slangs or phrases that people can use in their everyday life, which you think can make them sound more natural in English conversations?
Yeah, absolutely. So one word that comes up a lot is the word right, right?
Hmm.
Right, and this has many meanings. It can be right as in correct. It could be turn right or turn left. But we also use this word just to announce when we are about to say something or we're about to do something.
Yeah.
For example, if I'm going to stand up and leave. You know, it's time for me to leave this gathering or whatever I'm doing. You'll often see British people sort of slap their knee and go right, and it sort
Yeah.
of announces what's happening next. This is something that most of us, if we don't think about it, we forget that we do this all the time. But these little phrases like that can announce right
Hmm.
what's going to happen next. It sort of warns people around you, like what you're thinking and what you're about to say. Phrases like "I reckon" as well. I try
Hmm.
and teach people this all the time. Instead of "I think," right? I reckon, or as a response to something, yeah, I reckon so. Right?
Hmm.
These are, and this is what a lot of my content's about, is taking these textbook English phrases
Yeah.
and then showing how we actually have these much more native, natural, fixed expressions that yeah, people don't really seem to learn in school.
Yeah.
No worries instead of you're welcome.
Hmm.
So I think for me, there's all sorts of different ones depending on who you're speaking with and the kind of conversations that you're having. But yeah, yeah, those are a couple that come up every day. I think my
Yeah.
experience.
And what are one or two communication skills that you often teach students? We're not talking about grammar, obviously, and you already mentioned how harmful it can be to be focusing on grammar all the time. So, what are one
Yeah,
or two communication skills that you definitely teach your students?
yeah. So firstly, like I mentioned with the value of reactive English, right? Being
Hmm.
able to react in the moment to something that has been said. And a part of that, like I also mentioned, is this back channeling, right? How do we give feedback, right,
Hmm.
to somebody whilst they're speaking to let them know that we're still engaged, right? How do we, instead of just saying, "Oh, that's interesting," right? How do we say, "Oh, no way. Oh, okay. I never thought of that." Like these are the phrases that actually help you build connection with somebody in a conversation.
Yeah.
As well as that, the listening skills. I do comprehension exercises with my students, so that they can again get used to listening to full speed English with all the slang, with the pauses, with the
Yeah.
little mistakes. And lastly, tone and intonation. Right, I can't stress enough how important this is to understand native speakers, but to also be able to sound more native yourself. So we look at things like the skill of rising and falling intonation, right? Depending on what kind of thing you're asking, what you're saying, building suspense, right? How we can use pauses as well. It's music. It's once you learn the rhythm of English, everything just starts to make a lot more sense. So I focus a lot on that skill. Of course, grammar as well, but yeah, these things are essential in my opinion.
Yeah. Okay, as a wrap-up question, I'd like to ask you, so apart from accent, what do you think gives it away to people that they're talking to a British person? What's
Hmm.
like the most British thing about British people that people can recognize?
Yeah. So this is a good one. I think if we take accent out of it, I think like we talked about earlier, the indirectness, right?
Hmm.
The indirect language is a major signal that okay,
Yeah.
I'm speaking a native speaker. Yeah. Another really important part is when we use elision or contraction. So we squish our words together, or we remove words from a sentence, right?
Hmm.
Like these basic functional words. Um, when we do this, instead of saying, "Do you want to go to the park?" Right? You want to go to the park, right? We've taken a word off there. We've used, contraction. Want to becomes wanna. This is really what signals to me, okay, that
Hmm.
person has to be native, or they've spent a lot of time practicing to
Yeah.
sound native. This is a marker of someone who isn't just learning English, but is a very confident user of it.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I used to watch Phineas and Ferb a lot, and
Yes.
so I can't remember her name. I think it was I can't remember her name, but she's the girl that used to like Phineas a lot, and she would always say, "What you doing?" And she would not say, "What are you doing? What you doing?" That's literally how I learned it. I learned it from there. Yeah, just I thought it's worth mentioning. Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, so we have come to the end of session. But it was really amazing connecting with you, Sam, and I'm pretty sure people would learn a lot when they will be watching this video. And also, I'm truly grateful for you taking out some time to have this session with me.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me. Yeah, it's great. I love to talk about this stuff. So it's nice. And I see what you're doing. I see what you're doing on the channel. It's really awesome stuff. And I think it's really useful way for people to learn and improve their skills actually. So yeah, happy to be a part of it.
Yeah, thank you so much. And I also really appreciate what you're doing. I mean, I cannot really follow you on TikTok because TikTok is banned in India.
Mm.
But I do follow you on Instagram, and I think what you're doing is pretty amazing. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah.
Keep
Okay.
doing.
Have a great day.
Yeah, you too. Fantastic. Keep doing what you're doing. And
Yeah.
yeah, we'll contact again at some point down the line.
Yeah. Bye bye. Have a great day.
Bye bye.